In History of Questions, we begin with a linguistic anomaly that should not exist. The word mausoleum is a person's name that escaped history and became a category. Most names disappear within generations, even when attached to kings, yet this one hardened into vocabulary across cultures that never met its owner. That survival cannot be explained by sentiment, religion, or coincidence. The original building no longer stands, and its stones were reused centuries ago. What survived was an idea that performed a function so well that language absorbed it permanently. This video exists to identify that function before familiarity hides it again. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus was not influential because it was large, beautiful, or famous, because ancient history is full of large, beautiful, forgotten structures. Influence requires repeatability, not admiration. Something about this tomb made later societies want to recreate its logic even when they could not recreate its form. That means it solved a problem, not an aesthetic preference. Specifically, it solved the problem of how political authority could remain visible after the authority figure was dead. Once that solution existed, it spread without needing permission, enforcement, or survival of the original object. To understand why this solution appeared when it did, we must anchor ourselves precisely in the 4th century BCE. Caria was not an independent kingdom but a satrapy within the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Mausolus ruled as a satrap, meaning his legitimacy depended on imperial approval and local stability rather than divine kingship. His subjects were largely Greek-speaking and culturally Greek, while their political loyalty was Persian. That contradiction made authority fragile and highly dependent on perception. In such an environment, visible power mattered more than inherited tradition. Halicarnassus itself was redesigned to function as a visual argument for authority. Mausolus relocated the capital there and rebuilt it with fortified walls, a planned street grid, and a harbor optimized for visibility from the sea. Anyone approaching by ship encountered order before explanation. This was not decorative urbanism, it was strategic staging. Cities in the ancient world communicated power primarily through what could be seen, not what could be read. The mausoleum would later become the most extreme expression of that logic. When Mausolus died in 353 BCE, the political situation became unstable rather than ceremonial. His wife Artemisia II assumed power in a context where female rule required constant legitimization. The mausoleum was conceived not as an emotional response to death but as a continuity device for rule. It transferred authority from a living body to a permanent structure. The message was unmistakable without inscription. Leadership could vanish, but dominance would remain fixed in stone. That was new. The mausoleum's effectiveness begins with its measurable scale. Ancient sources and archaeological reconstruction place its height at approximately 45 meters, or 150 feet, making it one of the tallest structures in the Greek world at the time. Most Greek temples, including the Parthenon, stood under 15 meters tall. The mausoleum's base measured roughly 38 by 32 meters, larger than many contemporary sanctuaries. In an ancient urban skyline where most buildings were low, this difference was overwhelming. Height functioned as enforcement. The structure's design reinforced that dominance through vertical storytelling. A massive podium elevated the tomb above the ordinary ground plane, separating ruler from subject even in death. Above it stood 36 Ionic columns, invoking Greek architectural legitimacy and cultural trust. A stepped pyramidal roof referenced Near Eastern and Egyptian ideas of timelessness and eternity. At the summit stood a quadriga sculpture, a 4-horse chariot carrying statues of Mausolus and Artemisia, visually associating them with heroic and divine figures. Every layer added meaning, not ornament. Sculpture transformed the building from monument to narrative. The mausoleum employed renowned Greek sculptors, including Scopas, Bryaxis, Timotheus, and Leocares, whose reputations alone conferred prestige. Reliefs depicted Amazonomachy and Gigantomachy scenes, myths representing order triumphing over chaos. These were not aesthetic choices but ideological ones. Mausolus was being symbolically positioned among forces that shaped the cosmos. Viewers did not need literacy to understand hierarchy. This combination of scale, narrative, and visibility explains why the mausoleum was later counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Wonders were not simply large structures, they demonstrated mastery over materials, complexity, and human ambition. Funerary architecture almost never qualified for this category. The mausoleum did because it reframed burial as achievement rather than conclusion. Once death could be wondrous, architecture crossed a psychological threshold. The linguistic transformation followed naturally, as elites across the Hellenistic world began commissioning monumental tombs inspired by Halicarnassus. Existing terms proved inadequate. Ordinary graves and hero shrines did not capture the new scale or intent. The simplest solution was to name the category after the original example. Mausolus became mausoleum. This was not honorific, it was functional classification. Halfway through this analysis on history of questions, the deeper mechanism should now be visible. The mausoleum did not spread because people admired Mausolus as an individual. It spread because it standardized elite memory. After it, modest burial implied insignificance regardless of intention. Monumentality became expectation. Memory became competitive. The physical destruction of the mausoleum did nothing to halt its influence. Earthquakes over centuries reduced it to ruins, and medieval builders reused its stones, including the Knights of St. John in Bodrum. By then, the structure had already completed its cultural work. The term mausoleum no longer referred to Halicarnassus. It referred to an idea detached from place. Roman imperial architecture adopted the mausoleum's logic without copying its form. Augustus' mausoleum emphasized mass and urban visibility near the Tiber. Hadrian's mausoleum combined scale with mythic symbolism and strategic placement. The styles differed, but the function remained identical. Death became continuity theater. Modern state mausoleums repeat the same pattern. Materials change from marble to concrete and steel, but height, isolation, and permanence remain constant. These structures reassure the living more than they honor the dead. That psychological function did not originate in modern politics. It was inherited. Here is the dense idea worth pausing on. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus did not immortalize a man. It industrialized remembrance. Once remembrance became infrastructure, opting out became costly. That is why the model persists. The mausoleum still matters because it taught societies how to externalize memory into stone. It replaced lineage with scale and narrative with structure. Once that substitution occurred, it could not be reversed. Architecture began performing cognitive labor humans no longer wanted to carry alone. Power learned how to outlive people. We end deliberately without closure. If one tomb could reshape how authority is remembered for over 2 millennia, then the real question is not about ancient Caria. It is about which structures today are quietly training us how to remember, obey, and forget. That question is not historical. It is active. And that is why History of Questions exists.